Have you ever been having a cup of coffee with a small business owner friend of yours or gone online and seen questions that you've got? Of course you have, because all small businesses and all taxpayers have questions about their taxes. I'm Roger Harris, president of Padgett, and today's show is called Sound Familiar. And what we're going to try to do on this show is take questions that we have heard that we know apply to people all across the country and give you some answers to those questions. Now, let me start by saying the correct answer to every tax question starts with "it depends." Because while the tax law seems to apply to everyone equally, everyone's tax situation is different. And it really does start with "it depends." So what we're going to do is talk at a high level about some of these issues that we've heard, but you need to make sure that if you have a question, that you take your facts to a qualified tax professional. If you don't have one, at Padgett, we'd be happy to help you with that. But it really does depend on your situation and the law. But let's get started on some questions that have come in recently to us. The first question is, we got a call from someone who was getting ready to purchase some land and put a horse boarding facility up. And their question really revolved around their tax entity. The question specifically said, should it be an S Corp or an LLC? Well, the first thing you need to understand that when you're making an entity selection, there's really two considerations. One is the liability protection that the entity provides for you, and secondarily is the tax ramifications of that selection. The most important one in many instances can be liability. So we always suggest that you go to your attorney first. Deal with the kind of protection that you need to offer you the most liability protection, because that's, again, a big reason as why you're selecting an entity. In today's world, most attorneys are going to tell you you should be an LLC. So then when you come to us, we're in a position, because an LLC is a very flexible business in terms of how you're taxed. All the options are available to us. You can be an S Corp, you can be a C Corp, you could be a partnership, you could be a sole proprietor. So it's important that you go to the attorney first, then come to us. We'll then learn more about your business, understand how you're going to operate, and make the entity selection from a tax standpoint that makes the most sense. And then we can jump into how that entity will impact you tax-wise, what deductions are unique or different, how you're compensated or not compensated through the entity. But start with your attorney, then come to the accountant, or go to an accountant who has a partnership or a relationship with an attorney so you can work together on making those decisions. But remember, it's not a single tax decision. Sometimes taxes are secondary to other things. In this case, that can be very true. Second question, we have a woman who is operating in their home a piano instructions and has a son who is getting ready to start a business to provide lessons as well on other instruments. It appears that one business is existing and one is starting. When we go to the new business, we have the same discussion we just finished on the entity selection. That's the first place you start. I don't know there's a lot of liability in giving piano lessons, but there's probably something that could cause you to be concerned about it. But go to your attorney, decide what the entity needs to be to help you be protected. Then come to us. We'll make the entity selection. What is unique or different in this question is that we are operating in a home. There are deductions unique to operating a business out of a home that you need to be aware of. There are restrictions on how the house can be used to qualify for those deductions. So it's important here, and like in any other tax situation, that you deal with someone who has dealt with this before, that understands what are the uniqueness of deductions, or what is the different rules in driving from your home to a bank or to a customer versus coming from a fixed place of business. So make sure anytime you're selecting people for tax advice, you want to make sure that they've got experience in the type of business that you are operating, because there are uniqueness to each one of those, which kind of leads to our third business. We have I don't know if it's a man or a woman, starting a snowball business in Palm Beach, Florida, which should be interesting. It's probably a very needed service a lot of times a year. But there's some uniqueness to this. It's seasonal, probably, number one. But more important, anytime you're in the food and beverage business, you get into some unique business structures or questions or deductions, particularly if you're going to hire people. There's been a lot in the news recently about no tax on tips. So anytime you're in the food and beverage industry and you're going to have people working for you where a customer might tip them, it's going to be important. Payroll, so payroll is going to matter. Type of business is going to matter. What about the perishable foods that go in? What if I donate inventory? What if I donate food products? Again, start with the big stuff: liability, structure, and then the uniqueness of that business. And people who specialize in the food or beverage business can certainly help you in this business as well. Our last question, and again, very common question: someone has an Airbnb. They also have a business, but they have an Airbnb. I'm not going to focus on the business part because we've just dealt with that on the first three questions. But while real estate may seem simple to a lot of people in terms of, well, I just got an extra house over here, I'm going to rent it, collect some rent, pay some bills, how hard can it be? Actually, the real estate part of the tax code is one of the most complicated parts. There's something called active versus passive, which to the person who owns it, they don't know the difference and don't really care. They deem themselves as active because they're the one collecting the rent, paying the bills. They may use a real estate agency to do it. But active versus passive is a big discussion that we have to have. Also, if you have multiple properties, it gets more and more complicated. Again, if you have real estate and you're going to rent it, whether it be an Airbnb, a commercial building, a series of houses, it is a very complicated part of the tax code. Make sure you deal with someone with experience. There's even something called the Augusta rule, which means that there's the opportunity in a casual rental to have 2 free weeks of rental income for your personal residence while you go on vacation. Again, it sounds simple to be in the real estate business, but it's very complicated when it gets to the tax code and understanding your deductions. You may have deductions you cannot claim currently. I know that's not what you want to hear, but that's why it gets complicated. So again, same thing holds true when it comes to a business. This could or could not be a business. That's another discussion when you get into real estate. Are you in the business of real estate or you are a passive investor in real estate? So make sure you go to someone who has experience in the real estate business. It's not as simple as it looks. I hope this is helpful to you. We're going to repeat this on a regular basis. It's important that you get with people who know what your problem is and know how to apply the tax law to your individual situation. Again, if you don't have someone, we'd love to talk to you at Padgett. We hope you enjoyed today's version. If you did, we'll be back with another one. Send us your questions and we might answer yours on Sounds Familiar. Thanks for watching.